Hello, MGTOW. Hello, men. This is Howard Dare. Thanks for stopping by. So, I want to talk about the idea of trying to help our fellow man, right? Because this seems like a no-brainer, right? Like the best thing for you to do or for anyone to do is to fix the situation around them, okay? If something isn't working properly, you as a man, I as a man, my first thought is, well, I'm going to fix it and things are going to be better. And then as a result, things are going to be better for me. Like there's this meaningful contribution to a meaningful situation, like we're trying to get something done. And here's the solution. And now we can do it. And I've always thought that this is good work, right? This is good, effective, efficient work. In other words, a person could spend their time doing stuff that just plain old doesn't matter and plain old doesn't have any sort of an impact. And what good would any sort of work like that be? It would just be spinning your wheels, kicking up mud. So not a good idea. But it turns out that I was wrong. I was wrong about that. Okay. I was operating under the assumption that efficiency, productivity, is the most important thing. Getting things done, being effective. This is a very masculine way of looking at the world. And in my efforts over many, many years, I have come to the realization that this is not the case. As a matter of fact, if you come into a situation where there's a problem that people have not been able to solve for a long time, and you have a solution to that problem and you put forth that solution, a great many of those people will resent you. They will hate you. They will envy you. They will attempt to destroy you because it's not about solving the problem. It's about finding a place for the individual, right? So it's not the right man for the job. It's the right job for the man. And it's not the right job for the man because they're not going to help men. It's the right job for the woman. It's the right job for the minority. It's the right job for everyone but the good man, because the good man built the system around them and can repair the system around them. And they resent and hate that. And they want to show that they, without their skills, without their discipline, without their virtue, are just as good as a good man. So what's really taking place around us is the idea of tearing down the good, the noble, the virtuous man. Yes, it is a straight up Nietzschean inversion of values. And you can see this, or at least I can see this, where I'm at. And if you'll look at it, you'll see this as well. The idea of people coming, into work late as a kind of entitlement. So, if I were to say to you, okay, we're going to, meet up at 8:00, I suspect that 7:55, 7:50, you're ready to go and you're waiting. You're not ready +5. You're ready now, on time, before time. You would think that this is a noble and virtuous and decent, way to proceed. But of course, you're making the other people look bad. Right? This is a very interesting phenomenon. You tell somebody 8:00 and they don't even really start to get ready until 8:00. So when 8:00 rolls around and you're like, okay, we're ready to go. They're like, no, I'm going to need at least another 5 minutes. And, what's worth recognizing here is that this isn't just an example of individual laziness or an individual lack of discipline. This is an asserting that they don't have to be on time. Okay. It's the same thing, somebody walking into a room and speaking before, they check out what's going on in there. It doesn't matter to them what's going on in there. You could be planning a funeral and they're still coming in telling their jokes. This is an indicator, okay, that the situation, the problems that we're dealing with, the work that we want to accomplish is secondary to the status and the value that people can get from being involved in that situation. Again, not the right man for the job, but the right job for the man. And again, not the man. What I really mean is the woman. And it's not even, and she's going to do a good job. No, she's intentionally going to do the opposite of a good job, to assert that she is not held to that requirement. This is far too demanding on her. So what we have is a society full of men who have done right, are doing right, and wish to continue to do right. But it won't support them. As a matter of fact, it'll get them in a lot of trouble, because by showing this kindness, okay, this decency, this virtue, this discipline, it's interpreted as weakness, and it's interpreted as, the oppressive patriarchy as well. So unless the man can become self-validating, okay, unless he can become a contractor or work in such a situation that they're not singling him out and he's able to get something done and kind of just slide by, I don't know what to tell you, right? Because if you come into a company situation, a group situation, and you demonstrate your true skills, your true leadership skills, your true discipline skills, you're going to make 9 out of 10 of those people look like garbage. And they're going to come after you for that. And your skill alone won't see you through on something like that. One false accusation and you're going to jail and you're staying there. And it doesn't matter how absurd the accusation might be. They'll treat it as true. And when they find things, discoverable evidence that refutes the case, they'll just ignore it. They'll just hide it. They just won't talk about it. And if they can find anything that makes you look guilty when you're not, they won't let it go. They won't shut up on it. So people aren't even trying to tell the truth anymore. They're just trying to look good in the social situation. So that's what you're competing with. You're trying to do a good job. You're trying to do an honorable job. You're trying to give a fair day's work for a fair day's wage. And that's not the system that we are in anymore. And our loyalty, our decency and commitment to these, ideals and principles, while they reflect well on us, they do not serve us because the people around us do not hold the same beliefs. I work with a lot of drug treatment, addiction therapy situations. And I can tell you, for the majority, the people, they don't want help, okay? They want a kind of confirmation of the difficulty and the unfairness of their situation when it's really their own doing, or at least the solution is their own responsibility. And I'm not allowed to reach them. You know what I mean? I'm not even allowed to hearken back to some of their better days and then try to get them into that mindset and mind frame. No, they want to play the victim. Their victim status, that's their ticket. And anybody who steps forward with any sort of ability or trying to do a good job, they get shut down. They get shot down. So that's the situation that we're dealing in. To put it another way, you could be a brain surgeon, but if she's a cute girl and she knows how to, just do the basics, you're getting replaced. You could have 20 years on the job. But if she's cute, or if that person, is an affirmative action hire and they know even just the basics, you're done for as a man, as a worker, and a lot of people hear this and they're like, well, that's good, right? We should, those native men, because it applies to whatever culture we're talking about. You want to say here, you want to say, oh, those white men, but it really is just the native men who built the system. It's like, oh, they're oppressive. They're monsters. So every blessing that you have is given to you by a monster, and you could do better, right? Except you can't build, these people can't build any of it, and they haven't built any of it. And all they want is control. So, understand that control really is the thing that people are going after. And they use guilt and shame and obligation and gaslighting to get you there. And the idea that, wow, this doesn't even make any sense, like the way that men are being treated and abused. That's right. It doesn't even make any sense because that's part of it. It's known as creating intentional cognitive dissonance. It's like punishing somebody when they do good. And they're like, what the hell's going on here? And you do this for 6 days. And then on the 7th day, you just take a break. You don't punish them. And they're like, wow, thank you. I must have done good, right? So you just beat them down 6 times out of 7 for nothing. And then you just leave them alone for no reason. And then they start associating their own internal motivation into the whole situation. But it's just intentional cognitive dissonance. They're basically saying to the men and to the good hard workers that, no, we can pull the rug out from under you at any given moment for any given reason. So you need to live on edge. So the men are stressed, they're sick, they're losing their metabolism, they're not getting strong, right? The food is toxic, it's poison. It's to call it food is like an insult. Very little nutritional value, very, very cheap, very bad for us. Gives no nutrition, gives very little nutrition. But yes, it fills your belly, and it's tasty and it's not very expensive. So that's good, right? But, the price we pay, it accumulates over time. And once you've broken the spirit of the men, and that's what they've intentionally been doing for the last 40 or 50 years at least, they lose their motivation, to work. Walking dead, right? So they're crushed. We're crushed in the spirit, and eventually when you crush the spirit, eventually the body follows, like the person is in so much pain and suffering that they just want some relief, anything. And naturally they turn to anything that gives them pleasure or gives them some escape. But they were driven there. They didn't go there on purpose. What can I tell you, right? As far as like building a good life in a system that doesn't value you. Build your value internally. Okay. This is your garden. This is your mind. You get to build it and use the things that motivate you the way you want. And then you need to keep that separate largely from the outside world because the outside world wants to just tear you down because you're a good man. Does that make sense? Is that understandable? It really is like Robert Greene's first law, the 48 laws of power, the first law being, don't outdo the master. Right? So if you're hanging around with 9 out of 10 utterly incompetent people and you demonstrate any sort of virtue or competency or decency, what do you think those 9 out of 10 people are going to do to you? Well, that's what you've been experiencing probably for the better part of your life. And that's probably what you've been struggling with and thinking, well, how the hell am I supposed to get ahead in life? If everything good I do gets shot down because it makes weak people look bad, what the hell am I supposed to do? Well, I think, you're supposed to work for yourself. You have to find a way to let your efforts determine your future, as opposed to letting whether or not the group likes you determine your success in life. And understand that that's a prison cell, right? If you're linked to other people's approval, and to a degree we are, they can withhold it at any given moment for any given reason, and they will, right? So we live in this society and culture where you see these women walking around with like very few skills, very little discipline, but they're young and they're pretty, and they are just given the run of the roost. You know what I mean? Of course, it doesn't work. Right? Like female birds do not run the nest, or rather they do run the nest, but they don't build the nest, and outside of the nest, no, they're, that's not their job. So, now let's add into that, since we've put the women in charge and we've put their sensibilities as our ruling ideal. Okay. Now what do? Now you take care of the weak. Now you make sure nobody gets their feelings hurt. Now you become this giant nurturing bird's nest. Okay. So, your sales company is really worried about people's feelings and the sales are gone. So this is what, so now you're going to come into that company as a strong man with a strong voice and you're going to be a good salesman? Maybe, but you're not going to be welcome in that environment. So that's what we're looking at. You know what I mean? So look out, kid. It doesn't matter what you did. You're still going to get hit. So the trick here is to make sure that you can take a punch. A good fighter is a good fighter, but if he can't take a punch, he's not a good fighter. So, there's something hopeful right there, right? Learn how to take a punch. That's really the best I have for you. I would also say this, okay? Don't let it bother you. Don't harp on it. Don't lock in on it and think to yourself, well, this is so unfair. It is, and it's wrong. But find the parts of it that do work, that are fair, that you can make work, and embrace those parts and do it alone. Do not look for group approval. Do not look for rewards. Do it because you love it. Do it because you care about it. And keep it separate from other people. You don't care what they have to say about it. I don't really care what people have to say about my videos. I try to give my truth as I see it when in the moment. If I can do that, I'm good, right? I got nothing, I don't need to be too worried about that. And if anybody else is worried about something, it's like, well, that's their problem, So try to get yourself something that you care about and then get yourself to that stage with it. And I think that is a reward in and of itself. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, donate. I need your support. Please, MGTOW. If you can, click on my Cash App donation link, help out the Howard Dare channel so that I can continue to get by. The situations I'm talking about, this is my situation. Maybe you're listening to this and saying, no, Howard, everything's good. No problems at all. At which point I say, God bless you. Good deal. Maybe you could make a couple videos talking to the men about, how you pulled that off and how you got that to work out and some of the things you're doing to maintain that. I encourage you. In the meantime, that's what I'm doing, right? And unfortunately, things are not so great and things are not working out so well. And, the harder I try, the more committed I am to my principles and virtues and ideals. No, that doesn't seem to work either. So that's why I'm talking about it. So you find the things that you care about in life and you work on them for their own sake, because you get enjoyment and value out of it and you want to do good at it and do it, and you don't have to monetize it. It doesn't have to be, how you get by in life. Sorry. It can just be something, like drawing or painting or something like that. Let me know what you think about it and join me again, Howard Dare, as I plan to have more content for you. Thank you, MGTOW.